So everything we've talked about up until this point has been for negotiated procurements. And you can see how long and cumbersome the process can be. Sometimes it can be expedited. But I want to show you some other ways that the government expedites their sourcing strategies. So just by way of definition, full and open means that the government has adopted a sourcing strategy where anybody can go after the procurement. You can be an individual, you can be a small company, you can be a large company, you can be a historically black college or university, you can, any university, you can be a research and development center, pretty much anything goes, except some DoD contracts prohibit foreign companies from going after it. But for the most part, it's full and open to everybody. And nonprofits can go after it as well. There are also set-aside contracts, and we've been mentioning these, where set-aside contracts mean that the federal government, Small Business Administration, requires each agency to meet certain thresholds for certain organizations, veteran services owned, women-owned, labor surplus, HUD-zone, etc. All of those type requirements are either met by the agency through these set-aside programs, or, as we heard yesterday again, General Dynamics prime contractors are required to have X amount of % of business for each of those type of categories to help the agency meet the goals. The sourcing strategy, when they use the set-aside sourcing strategy, you have to be certified. What does certification mean? In some certifications, it means you just sign on the dotted line that you're certified. So women-owned businesses, you can sign on the dotted line, you're certified. If you're going after other certifications, a small business, we talked about how you do that, right? We check the NAICS code and we figure out what the personnel number is. Other certifications, however, like all the veteran-owned companies, they have to go through the VA. There's an 8A set-aside program for small disadvantaged businesses. You have to go through a certification for that and actually be admitted into the program. Also, by way of adding to that, there's a program that the government has called the Mentor-Protege Program. So companies like, we should have asked this question yesterday, General Dynamics and other large companies can choose to take on a small business or multiple small businesses as a partner in this Mentor-Protege Program. So what happens is you hook up with the small business. The benefits for the big business is that they get tax breaks by sort of adopting them. What you get is the expertise of working with the General Dynamics, and you get they tend to bring you in on deals. They try to help you with your business strategy. The only problem I've seen with the program is that sometimes there are very unrealistic expectations. Like the small business says, okay, I'm here, you do everything else to the prime. And that prime doesn't have time to do all that. You know what I'm saying? So it's got to be sort of a mutually beneficial kind of relationship that you guys work out. But I've seen many of them be highly successful. So that's something I should look into. Okay, two other ways of describing how the government sources is through negotiated procurement. So when they send out that request for proposal, and what they're assuming is that you're going to have questions about it. Because if they didn't think you were going to have questions about it, they would use an invitation for bid process. So there's two different sets of language. Invitation for bid means that they send out the invitation for bid and you respond back with a bid, and then the government does a public opening. You see this much more in state and local governments than you do in the federal government, but the federal government still does it. And so you could physically show up at the date and time that they're going to open, and you can see them open all the bids, and you can see where your price falls in the great scheme of things. Now, what some agencies do is they do this reverse auctioning. You see GSA doing this, and we talked about this the first week, where the government says, okay, bidding is going to start at 2 o'clock on Friday. At 2 o'clock on Friday, you log in and put your price in. Anybody else who wants to play has to come in and beat your price. And they'll say the competition will go on for maybe an hour or whatever, and you just have to, if you still want the business, you just have to bid lower than what the previous bidder did. So that's a form of invitation for bid. Negotiated procurement is when you go through the whole process like we've been describing it, with submitting the proposal, them issuing a request for proposal, us responding with a proposal, not a bid, and using all those after submission activities that could be required. The next two ways that the government differentiates things is something called a sole source procurement. So we all know, because we've been spending 3 different weeks talking about it, negotiated procurements can take a long time. It takes a long time on your side, it takes a long time on their side. Sole source procurements, if the government's not buying large dollar items, so I think up to 150,000, they can do they can sole source it to a person. So say, for example, I'll tell you about a phone call I got one time. I was running a $500 million contract, and there was my customer called me from Jacksonville, Florida. He said, Marianne, I need a Native American who can hang tapes, who's a woman, who her business is in a hub zone. And he was just like clicking off all the certifications, and he wanted me to find this magical person in the sky that met all these certifications. So why was he interested in all that? Well, he was interested in all that. Any other contracting officer that would have called me that was interested in all that would have been interested in that because they were trying to meet their quotas for each of the set-asides. So somebody could have done a sole source to a Native American, and 100% of the contract value would have gone to the agency meeting their Native American small business classification. Why this guy in particular was calling me to hit all these different elements was because remember when the DOD went through BRAC, Base Reduction and Closure Act, where they were closing bases because they said there was redundancy and too much expense. His base was up for closure, and the more small business that they could demonstrate that they had at the base, the greater likelihood. That was one of the factors in determining whether or not they were closed. So he didn't want to lose his job, so he, obviously pushed for small businesses at that point. So the government definitely pays attention to small businesses. So as opposed to a sole source when the government only considers one vendor, so HHS called me and said, we'd like you to do some training and give us your price and tell us how many days and a description. I sent that in. I was the only one considered. That was a sole source procurement. They had worked with me in the past. They wanted me to come back, teach the same classes. And so it was, there was no competition. I didn't write a proposal other than a quick description of the stuff, and I got the business. As opposed to a single source procurement, where there is only one vendor out there who can do the work. Now, when you think about it, that is really sort of limited to situations where we're doing something for maybe national defense, the CIA, the FBI, where somebody's got such a niche little product, they're the only ones that provide it. So that situation doesn't happen very frequently, but that's another way the government can buy. There are also things called micro purchases and purchase card purchases. So the government issues certain contracting officers a purchase card, and those government personnel can spend up to the dollar amount that they're allotted on that purchase card. So if they're buying, like for example, when they were buying one of my classes, like a couple-hour seminar, they could use a purchase card to buy it. They could also use this micro-purchasing. So these are two methods that sort of circumvent the big acquisition kind of issues and just kind of go in for the small dollar amount. So they've just raised this amount, $5,000 for DOD and $10,000 for other civilian agencies. Not really clear to me why the DOD can only spend $5,000 and everybody else can spend $10,000, but that is it. And one other point I want to make, since I just mentioned it, contracting officers. If you want to be a contracting officer in the government, not that I'm suggesting everybody leave the private industry and go be a contracting officer, but they're required to take classes to achieve certification. And they have level 1, level 2, and level 3 certification. Once they complete those 3 levels of certification, then they are eligible to get a warrant. And that warrant is a dollar amount that the government has given them pre-authorization to spend up to. So if you have a $10,000 warrant as a contracting officer, and the contract comes in at $999, you can buy it. But if it comes in at $10,001, you have to bump it up to the next level of contracting officer that has more authority. And you know, these warrants start anywhere from like the small business threshold all the way up to, when I renegotiated the $8 billion NMCI contract, we had a contracting officer who had unlimited warrant, which means she was so trusted by the federal agency that she could spend any amount of money on behalf of the agency. Very few people have that. Another person to keep in mind who might be able to help you is the small business liaison. So there's the Small Business Administration, who helps you if you want to develop a business plan, or if you want help in learning about federal opportunities and maybe hooking you up with people in different agencies. That's what the Small Business Agency as an agency does. They're the ones that set the goals for the agencies that they have to meet, etc. But within each federal agency, within NIH, HHS, Department of Energy, each of them have a small business liaison office. So you can look at you can look at any agency's webpage, and particularly agencies that you're interested in getting involved with, and finding who the small business liaison office is. Those liaison offices provide several things for you. Sometimes they provide speed dating. I've never done speed dating, but what happens is you sign up for maybe 10-minute interviews with various program managers. And you literally have 10 minutes, and you talk to them about what your goods and services are, and they can talk to you about what their needs are. So that's one opportunity they have. They also do a lot of small business training to help you. So things that we didn't cover in this class, that when changes in regulations occur, they can help you with those kinds of things as you go on. They're usually, they will have training sessions like webinars, because they know most companies can't get up to Washington to do this. They'll also do face-to-face kind of things. Sometimes they put together like almost like an electronic mall where companies can put up products and services so that when their program managers need something, they can just go through the mall kind of thing, as opposed to having to know off the top of their head who every company is. You can kind of put your data in. So some agencies do a better job at this than others. Government-wide access contracts are another thing that you might want to think about. Like OASIS right now is something that's coming out. And what these programs are is one agency realizes that they need a lot of stuff for their agency. And instead of just buying for their agency, they open up the scope of it to the entire federal government. So you might be contracting directly with NIH, but you're able to sell your products and services across the entire federal government. So this is something that is a little duplicative of process, and I'll tell you that in a minute. So anyway, government-wide access contracts. One federal agency can buy for other federal agencies. So that's something you might want to think about. Just getting on those kind of things, because then you have more companies, more federal agencies can see you. Let me come back to this in 1 second. Okay, so GSA schedules, this is the duplicative piece. So what's been happening traditionally is every single agency has been buying stuff for just their individual agency, and not even their entire agency. Like, I'm a department and I buy things for my department, and you're in that department and you buy things for that department. It was a very, everybody was doing the same thing, and what was happening is, even though the government could be the big kahuna when it comes to purchases, because they're the #1 buyer in the world, the fact of the matter was they're not acting like it. Because if I buy computers and you buy computers, we're both going to get the quantity discounts for 10 computers, if that's how many we're buying. But if we put all of the federal government needs together in one requirement, now we can get really low prices on computers, and everybody in the government can have them. So what the government has done is they have said, GSA, you have the responsibility to make us act like one buyer. Meaning, figure out what all our requirements are and start trying to procure in this manner, where we're actually acting like the biggest buyer out there, so we can get these quantity discounts. So one of the things they did was was they put these GSA schedules in place. So for certain products and services, you can go to the GSA website, and all GSA does is buy for everybody else. They really don't do much themselves. It's strictly, they're the buying function for mostly, well, for civilian and DoD. As you heard about when Judy was here, she talked about the DIBS program and DLA and how each DLA field office buys different things for the military. So this one buys aviation, this one buys weapon systems. So GSA doesn't buy that stuff, but they buy like cleaning products for everybody in the government. So what you do with the GSA schedule is they have different schedules listed, and you can apply to be on one of those schedules. There's no like due date for a GSA schedule. You can put it in whenever you want. The only thing you have to pay attention to is that what we talked about yesterday, you have to be on the latest amendment for the solicitation we're going after. So GSA schedules make it easier for a government agency to buy and for the contractor to sell. The notion here is, I'm the contractor, I put one contract together with GSA, and I can sell to anybody in government. That's a much more effective way than doing all these individual procurements. Most agencies do buy off the GSA schedule, but as I mentioned with OASIS, you still have agencies that are going off and doing their own thing, even though the government's saying GSA is supposed to be responsible for all this. The more schedules you have, the better off you are. Why is that? Because contracting officers are creatures of habit, just like all of us are creatures of habit. And if you find a GSA schedule that works for you, you tend to keep going back to that same GSA schedule. So you may find that if you can be on multiple GSA schedules, you have a better likelihood of being on the GSA schedule that that particular contracting officer is using. Normally the GSA schedules are very specific. So if you sell cleaning products, you're only on one GSA schedule. But like if you're selling services, you could be on multiple GSA schedules. That's just by nature of these. Schedules allow you to team with other schedule holders to put together these contracting teaming agreements. So normally, you could prime the deal or you could sub the deal. In this case, you can actually both go in as primes, partners for a particular procurement, as long as you're selecting another GSA schedule holder. It has to be two schedule holders. It allows for both passive and active marketing. What do I mean by that? So you can physically go to federal agencies and say, please buy our products and services, and we have this GSA, and it'll be really easy for you. Because quite frankly, the government doesn't have to go through that whole RFP process to use this GSA schedule. They can literally look at GSA Advantage, which is that big electronic mall in the sky, but once you get a GSA schedule, you put up all your products and services and prices. They can just look at that and do an analysis of prices right from there. So it makes it a lot easier for federal agencies. So from active marketing, you can go in and market to individual agencies and then can do it. But then passively, they can find you. Once you're a GSA schedule holder, you can put a GSA logo on your web page, and the government, when they see that, automatically knows you're going to be easier to deal with than somebody who doesn't have a GSA logo on their page, because you already have a contract in place with them. And the other thing that's happening is GSA used to really buy just like commodities, like the lowest level kind of stuff. They're really moving up the food chain. So a lot of times they actually work with federal agencies to figure out solutions for them. Because, you know, some agencies are shrinking quite a bit, and they just don't have the technical expertise anymore to be able to put together these procurements or to figure out what they need. You know, we can't get an RFP if they don't know what they need. So GSA is performing this consulting role to federal agencies to help them design the solution, and now they're involved in, you know, they'll be using the GSA schedule to get the work done. So it seems to be the current trend is where we're moving towards these GSA schedules. How do you get on the GSA? There were a couple things to keep in mind before you even think about this. GSA evaluation time varies. I work with companies all the time to help them get on the GSA schedule. I've had companies get on a GSA schedule like from the very start of the project to the very negotiated done deal in a month. No pain, no, you know, very simple, right?